This program is brought to you by Emory University.
Good afternoon. I'm Rosemary McGee, Director of Emory's Manuscript Archives and Rare Book Library. It's my true pleasure to welcome all gathered here, the readers, the writers, the scholars, the students, the teachers, the poets, the believers in poetry. Poetry calls upon us to transcend what other mundane preoccupations on a chilly Saturday afternoon, allowing us to move into the warmth of the lyrical. For Emory University, poetry stands at the very heart of what we do at the academic, experiential, and geographical center with our acclaimed faculty, extraordinary students, and outstanding collections. Of course, collections do not just arrive of their own accord. There are poets, collectors, archivists, and curators, those who care for this special realm, guardians of the metaphysical. Among those very distinctive collections in MARBL are the papers and poems of Carol Ann Duffy, Poet Laureate of the United Kingdom, who honors us with her poetry and presence today. There's no person better placed to introduce our distinguished guest than our own university poetic treasure, my colleague Kevin Young. Curator of literary collections, as well as curator of the Raymond Danowski Poetry Library, Kevin is also the Charles Howard Candler Professor of English and Creative Writing. Kevin, at last count, has authored 8 books of poetry and edited 8 other collections, is the winner of numerous literary prizes, including the American Book Award and a finalist for the National Book Award. As curator, professor, poet, and national figure in the literary landscape, he is someone who deeply and intimately understands the delicate dimensions of the care and nurturing of poetry. In an interview a few years back, Kevin remarked that a poem is made up of poetic and unpoetic language, or unexpected language. I think there are many other vernaculars, he added, whether it's the vernacular of the blues or the vernacular of the visual art, the sort of living language of the everyday. His own writing concerns music, food, grief, race, and love, all the topics centered on both everydayness and unexpectedness of our lives. He shares these wondrous qualities with our featured guest, Carol Ann Duffy, and thus he is very well suited to introduce her to us today.
Thank you so much, Rosemary, and thank you all for coming out today. It is my honor to introduce this afternoon Carol Ann Duffy. Before I do, I'd like to thank the organizations that have made this season of the Raymond Danowski Poetry Library Reading Series possible, namely the Hightower Family Fund, MARBL, the Manuscript Archives and Rare Book Library, Emory's Creative Writing Department, and Emory Libraries. There are too many people to thank individually because I could go on all day, but I do want to single out my graduate student, Aaron Goldsman, who has worked tirelessly with me on the series for the past couple of years. Please give him and the sponsors a round of applause. Shortly after being named United Kingdom's Poet Laureate in 2009, Carol Ann Duffy told an interviewer, quote, "All my poems are love poems. What poetry does is add something to the world. Sometimes it can change the way we see the world. Poetry can offer consolation. It can be angry and potent, but all these poems, these moments in language, come from love." Such consolations are found aplenty in the poetry of Carol Ann Duffy, whose work is by turns angry and potent and loving, often all at once. I first came to Duffy's work, as many did, with The World's Wife from 1999. A book that manages to be both bold and funny, fierce and spot on in its depictions of the wives, which is to say the centers of myth and history. From The Devil's Wife to the hilarious Mrs. Darwin, The voices in Duffy's book challenge and change our assumptions and lines both plain-spoken and wry, and also frequently rhyming. Here's the opening to Delilah. "Teach me," he said. We were lying in bed, how to care. I nibbled the purse of his ear. What do you mean? Tell me more. He sat up and reached for his beer. I'm not alone in saying Duffy is above all a love poet. She expands even that notion, knowing that love changes not just ourselves, but our language. This can be seen in her bevy of children's books and anthologies, as well as her own works and edited volumes like Stopping for Death. By my count, she has published over 50 books. Most of these, including drafts, correspondence, and other writings for and around those books, are found in her archive, which we're honored to house here at MARBL. If the poems in The World's Wife are often about the paradoxes and silences of love, examined by turning myth inside out, then Duffy's 2005 book, Rapture, tells of love from all sides of a love affair. That the book, winner of the T.S. Eliot Prize, is told from the perspective of an I makes no difference. The poems prove deeply empathetic to the lover and the beloved, to the you in the poems, as Rapture's protagonists go through the ups and downs of deep and deeply modern love, from the pleasures of texting, here's a quote, the codes we send arrive with a broken cord, to grief, to quote, the blush of memory. Like Modern Love, the famed 19th century sonnet sequence by George Meredith, Duffy's sonnets mean to render the delights and difficulties of doing that timeless thing, loving, in a contemporary world. The sonnet is both a container for such an idea, but also provides its metaphor. An old form made new, the sonnet, like love, is something that works best when its work is not too strenuous or obvious. We have one poem from the sequence, Spring, available as a broadside. It's a limited edition, handmade, beautiful object. It's a long-standing tradition in this, the 10th year of the Danowski Poetry Library Reading Series. These are available at a one-time discounted price today with deeper discounts for students. This keepsake will go fast as the others have, so please remember to pick one up, and proceeds go to help support the readings. A word about the series. This calendar year, as I mentioned, is our 10th year, and I'm struck by the series array of readers from all over the English-speaking world. Duffy is just the latest of the laureates featured on this very stage, from Nobel laureate Seamus Heaney, U.S. Poets Laureate Billy Collins and Natasha Trethewey, and inaugural poet Elizabeth Alexander. A number of the poets we've hosted are no longer with us, including Galway Connell, who passed away just last year, and Lucille Clifton and Seamus Heaney, whose collections are found in MARBL. Of course, their voices will always be with us. I'm aware more than ever that the Danowski Poetry Library is a living library, striving to be the poetry library of record for the long 20th century into the 21st. And the reading series is an integral part of that. We were talking backstage, and Carol Ann actually knew Raymond Danowski back in the day, so can tell the stories later. Back again to Spring, what Duffy calls spring's pardon, which we need a bit of around here. I think the thing that strikes us, even reading about the dissolution of a relationship or the disillusionment of long love, are her poems' profound echoes of hope. It is ultimately the hope of language, a belief that the lushness of sound and the specificity of saying can provide sustenance and even a kind of salvation. In her 2011 book, The Bees, which includes some of her laureate poems, she writes powerfully about consolation in her poem Last Post, about the deaths of a soldier in war. The war may be World War I here, but it seems to speak to our world ever at war. The poem is told backwards, or rather imagines the you, a soldier, getting up, no longer wounded, and walking away. The poem's ending, quote, "If poetry could truly tell it backwards, then it would," speaks of time, but again of timelessness, of the ways only in a poem can the rhyme ravel and unravel, can the story be not just retold, but relived. The you in Duffy is us, not so much an expansive Whitman-esque I as the Shakespearean you or thou, a specific yet shifting subject, one particularly powerful because no matter its struggle, it remains ultimately free. And all of you, or should I say y'all, here today, Shakespearean, Georgian, Scottish, and free, are in for a treat. Gentle people, Carol Ann Duffy.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. I've been made so welcome, and a lovely day today. Thank you, Kevin, for your introduction. I'm going to start with some poems from The World's Wife. And in these poems, what I wanted to do was to take all the stories and characters from my childhood, from my school days, and celebrate these things I'd carried around in my head all my life by retelling. Sometimes trying to find something surprising in what seemed very familiar. And the very first story I remembered, these were all coming from mythology or fairy tales, sometimes the movies or history, was the story of King Midas from Ovid's book Metamorphoses. And in that book, everything and everyone is subject to change. Midas was offered a wish by the gods, and he asked that everything he touched would turn to gold. And as a child, I'd been enthralled, enchanted by this story. But as an adult writer, I felt very queasy imagining being his lover shortly after this wish was granted. So here is Mrs. Midas, a woman of our time. She's cooking in her kitchen. Everything's going well. She pours a glass of wine, and she looks out through her window into the garden. And at the end of her garden, she sees her husband, Midas, up to no good. Mrs. Midas. It was late September. I just poured a glass of wine, begun to unwind while the vegetables cooked. The kitchen filled with the smell of itself, relaxed, its steamy breath gently blanching the windows. So I opened one, then with my fingers wiped the other's glass like a brow. He was standing under the pear tree, snapping a twig. Now, the garden was long and the visibility poor, the way the dark of the ground seems to drink the light of the sky. But that twig in his hand was gold. And then he plucked a pear from a branch. We grew fondant d'automne, and it sat in his palm like a light bulb. On. I thought to myself, is he putting fairy lights in that tree? He came into the house. The doorknobs gleamed. He drew the blinds. You know the mind. I thought of the field of the cloth of gold and of Miss Macready. He sat in that chair like a king on a burnished throne. The look on his face was strange, wild, vain. I said, what in the name of God is going on? He started to laugh. I served up the meal. For starters, corn on the cob. Within seconds, he was spitting out the teeth of the rich He toyed with his spoon, then mine, then with the knives, the forks. He asked where was the wine. I poured with a shaking hand, a fragrant bone, dry white from Italy, then watched as he picked up the glass, goblet, golden chalice, drank. It was then that I started to scream. He sank to his knees. After we'd both calmed down, I finished the wine on my own, hearing him out. I made him sit on the other side of the room, keep his hands to himself. I locked the cat in the cellar. I moved the phone. The toilet I didn't mind. I couldn't believe my ears, how he'd had a wish. Look, we all have wishes, granted. But who has wishes granted? Him. Do you know about gold? It feeds no one. Aurum, soft, untarnishable, slakes no thirst. He tried to light a cigarette. I gazed, entranced, as the blue flame played on its luteous stem. At least, I said, you'll be able to give up smoking for good. Separate beds. In fact, I put a chair against my door, near petrified. He was below, turning the spare room into the tomb of Tutankhamun. You see, we were passionate then, in those halcyon days, unwrapping each other rapidly, like presents, fast food. But now I feared his honeyed embrace, the kiss that would turn my lips to a work of art. And who, when it comes to the crunch, can live with a heart of gold? That night, I dreamt I bore his child, its perfect all limbs, its little tongue like a precious latch, its amber eyes holding their pupils like flies. My dream milk burned in my breasts. I woke to the streaming sun. So he had to move out. We'd a caravan in the wilds, in a glade of its own. I drove him up under cover of dark. He sat in the back. And then I came home, the woman who married the fool who wished for gold. At first, I visited, odd times, parking the car a good way off, then walking. You knew you were getting close. Golden trout on the grass. One day, a hare hung from a larch, a beautiful lemon mistake. And then his footprints, glistening next to the river's path. He was thin, delirious, hearing, he said, the music of Pan from the woods. Listen. That was the last straw. What gets me now is not the idiocy or greed, but lack of thought for me, pure selfishness. I sold the contents of the house and came down here. I think of him in certain lights, dawn, late afternoon, and once a bowl of apples stopped me dead. I miss most, even now, his hands, his warm hands on my skin, his touch. Thank you. Another story from the same source is the story of Tiresias. I suppose Tiresias would have been a middle-aged man, and he one day went out for a walk on his own in the woods, and on this walk, he came across two snakes attempting to mate. I have no idea what that might look like. He didn't like the look of it, so he prevented it by beating the snakes to a pulp with his walking stick, as you would. And of course, the gods were always looking down on what humans were up to, and they witnessed Tiresias killing these snakes and were very angry with him, and they punished him then and there by turning him into a woman for 7 years. And at the end of that 7 years, he could become a man again. And of course, Tiresias, mentioned in Eliot's great poem, The Wasteland. So thinking of this, I wondered if you were married to Tiresias, how you would deal with matters when he came home, thus chastised. And this poem is very much informed by Sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love that alters where its alteration finds. So here's Mrs. Tiresias. All I know is this. He went out for his walk a man and came home female. Out the back gate with his stick, the dog, wearing his gardening trousers, an open-necked shirt, and a jacket in Harris tweed I'd patched at the elbows myself, whistling. He liked to hear the first cuckoo of spring, then write to the Times. I'd usually heard it days before him, but I never let on. I'd heard one that morning while he was asleep, just as I heard, at about 6 p.m., a faint sneer of thunder up in the woods, and felt a sudden heat at the back of my knees. He was late getting back. I was brushing my hair at the mirror and running a bath when a face swam into view next to my own. The eyes were the same, but in the shocking V of the shirt were breasts. When he uttered my name in his woman's voice, I passed out. Life has to go on. I put it about that he was a twin, and this was his sister come down to live while he himself was working abroad. And at first I tried to be kind, blow-drying his hair till he learnt to do it himself, lending him clothes till he started to shop for his own, sisterly, holding his soft new shape in my arms all night. Then he started his period. 1 week in bed. 2 doctors in. 3 painkillers 4 times a day. And later, a letter to the powers that be demanding full paid menstrual leave 12 weeks per year. I see him still, his selfish, pale face peering at the moon through the bathroom window. The curse, he said, the curse. Don't kiss me in public, he snapped the next day. I don't want folk getting the wrong idea. It got worse. After the split, I would glimpse him out and about, entering glitzy restaurants on the arms of powerful men, though I knew for sure there'd be nothing of that going on if he had his way, or on TV, telling the women out there how, as a woman himself, he knew how we felt. His flirt's smile. The one thing he never got right was the voice, a cling peach slithering out from its tin. I gritted my teeth. And this is my lover, I said, The one time we met at a glittering ball, under the lights, among tinkling glass, and watched the way he stared at her violet eyes, at the blaze of her skin, at the slow caress of her hand on the back of my neck, and saw him picture her bite at the fruit of my lips, and hear my red, wet cry in the night as she shook his hand, saying, "How do you do?" And I noticed then his hands, her hands, the clash of their sparkling rings and their painted nails. Thank you. For some reason, when I was reading that, I had the Clintons running through my mind. It's a very tiny poem I stole from the diary of the wife of Charles Darwin, Mrs. Darwin. 7th of April, 1852, went to the zoo. I said to him, "Something about that chimpanzee over there reminds me of you." It's very cheap, I know. And the last one I read from The World's Wife is probably my favorite of these old stories and characters, the story of Faust. And you remember that Faust sold his soul to Mephistopheles, to the devil, in exchange for unimaginable power and wealth. He could have everything he wanted. Kind of like Tony Blair, I feel. But at the end of his years, he must pay up. So here is the equally unpleasant Mrs. Faust telling this story. And she had met Faust when they were at university together. And after a kind of on-off relationship, she quite pragmatically thought she would back this horse and marry him. She's very materialistic, a big consumer, very selfish. Mrs. Faust. First things first, I married Faust. We met as students, shacked up, split up, made up, hitched up, got a mortgage on a house, flourished academically, BA, MA, PhD, no kids, 2 toweled bathrobes, hers, his. We worked, we saved, we moved again, fast cars, a boat with sails, a second home in Wales, the latest toys, computers, smartphones. We prospered, moved again. Faust's face? Clever, greedy, slightly mad. I was as bad. I grew to love the lifestyle, not the life. He grew to love the kudos, not the wife. He went to whores. I felt not jealousy, but chronic irritation. I went to yoga, tai chi, feng shui, therapy, colonic irrigation. And Faust would boast at dinner parties of the cost of doing deals out east, then take his lust to Soho in a cab, to say the least, to lay the ghost, get lost, meet panthers, feast. He wanted more. I came home late one winter's evening, hadn't eaten. Faust was upstairs in his study, in a meeting. I smelled cigar smoke, hellish, oddly sexy, not aloud. I heard Faust and the other laugh aloud. Next thing, the world, as Faust said, spread its legs. First, politics, safe seat, MP, right hon, KG, then banks, offshore, abroad, and business, vice chairman, chairman, owner, lord. Enough? Encore, Faust was cardinal, pope, knew more than God, flew faster than the speed of sound around the globe, lunched, walked on the moon, golfed, holed in one, lit a fat Havana on the sun. Then he backed a hunch, invested in smart bombs, in harms. Faust dealt in arms, Faust got in deep, got out, bought farms, cloned sheep. Faust surfed the internet for like-minded Bo Peep. As for me, I went my own sweet way, saw Rome in a day, spun gold from hay, had a facelift, had my breasts enlarged, my buttocks tightened, went to China, Thailand, Africa, returned, enlightened, turned 40, celibate, teetotal, vegan, Buddhist, 41, went blonde, went redhead, went brunette, went native, went ape, went berserk, went bananas, went on the run alone, went home. Faust was in. A word, he said. I spent the night being pleasured by a virtual Helen of Troy, face that launched 1,000 ships. I kissed its lips. Thing is, I've made a pact with Mephistopheles, the devil's boy. He's on his way to take away what's owed, reap what I sowed. For all these years of gagging for it, going for it, rolling in it, I've sold my soul. At this, I heard a serpent's hiss, tasted evil, knew its smell. A scaly devil hand poked up right through the terracotta Tuscan tiles at Faust's bare feet and dragged him, oddly smirking, there and then, straight down to hell. Oh well. Faust Will left everything, the yacht, the several homes, the Learjet, the helipad, the loot, etc., the lot, to me. C'est la vie. When I got ill, it hurt like hell. I bought a kidney with my credit card, then I got well. I keep Faust's secret still, the clever, cunning, callous bastard didn't have a soul to sell. No. Nasty taste there. I'm going to read some different poems now from a collection called Rapture, which is a book of 52 short poems which tell the story of a love affair from its beginnings through all its events till its ending. And I make use throughout these poems of the sonnet form, which I think, as Shakespeare demonstrates, is ideal for the love poem, kind of little black dress of poetry. So mine are either full sonnets or versions or broken sonnets. And for most of the poems, I just give a one-word title. I want each poem to be simply of the moment that provoked it. So I'm not going to introduce these poems individually, but I will read a handful of them in order of what happened. Text. I turn the mobile now, like an injured bird. We text, text, text are significant words. I reread your first, your second, your third. Look for your small X, feeling absurd. The codes we send arrive with a broken chord. I try to picture your hands, their image is blurred. Nothing my thumbs press will ever be heard. Tea. I like pouring your tea, lifting the heavy pot and tipping it up, so the fragrant liquid steams in your china cup. Or when you're away or at work, I like to think of your cupped hands as you sip, of the faint half-smile of your lips. I like the questions, sugar, milk, and the answers I don't know by heart yet, for I see your soul in your eyes, and I forget. Jasmine, gunpowder, Assam, Earl Grey, Ceylon. I love tea's names. Which tea would you like, I say? But it's any tea for you, please, any time of day. As the women harvest the slopes for the sweetest leaves on Mount Wu Yi, and I'm your lover, smitten, straining your tea. Row. But when we rowed, the room swayed and sank down on its knees. The air hurt and purpled like a bruise. The sun banged the gate in the sky and fled. But when we rowed, the trees wept and threw away their leaves. The day ripped the hours from our lives. The sheets and pillows shredded themselves on the bed. But when we rowed, our mouths knew no kiss, no kiss. Our hearts were jagged stones in our fists. The garden sprouted bones grown from the dead. But when we rowed, your face blanked, a page erased of words. My hands squeezed themselves, burned like verbs. Love turned and ran and cowered in our heads. Syntax. I want to call you thou, the sound of the shape of the start of a kiss, like this, thou. And to say after, I love, thou, I love, thou I love, not I love you. Because I so do, as we say now, I want to say thee, I adore thee, and to know in my lips the syntax of love resides, and to gaze in thine eyes. Love's language starts, stops, starts, the right words flowing or clotting in the heart. Art. Only art now, our bodies, brushstroke, pigment, motif, our story, figment, suspension of disbelief, the thrum of our blood, percussion, chords, minor, for the music of our grief. Art, the chiseled, chilling marble of our kiss, locked into soundless stone, our promises, or fizzled into poems, page print for the dried flowers of our voice. No choice for love, but art's long illness, death, Huge theatres for the echoes that we left, applause, then utter, dark, grand opera for the passion of our breath, and the Oscar-winning movie in your heart, and where my soul sang, croaking, art. And in this last poem from Rapture, which is called the Love Poem, you'll recognize many fragments from love poetry of the past. So I suppose what I'm doing in this poem is asking other poets to line up behind these poems, both as influences and, in a funny kind of way, support. The love poem. Till love exhausts itself, longs for the sleep of words, my mistress' eyes, to lie on a white sheet at rest in the language. Let me count the ways, or shrink to a phrase like an epitaph. Come live with me, or fall from its own high cloud as syllables in a pool of verse, 1 hour with thee. Till love gives in and speaks in the whisper of art. Dear heart, how like you this? Love's lips pursed, quotation marks kissing a line. Look in thy heart and write. Love's light fading, darkening, black as ink on a page. There is a garden in her face. Till love is all in the mind. Oh, my America, my new found land. Or all in the pen, in the writer's hand. Behold, thou art fair. Not there, except in a poem known by heart like a prayer. Both near and far, near and far, the desire of the moth for the star. Thank you. Okay. And the final third of this reading, I'm going to read some poems from a collection called The Bees. And some poems are about bees in this collection. Sometimes the bee is an image. And I suppose this came about because I share in our general anxiety about our bees. They do seem environmentally to be very much the canary in the mine. And I was also aware of the quite ancient connection between poets and bees, from Virgil through Sylvia Plath, before and beyond them. So this first poem acknowledges that, and it's by way of a blessing on poetry and on bees themselves. And I go back to the first bee poet in the title, Virgil's Bees. Bless air's gift of sweetness, honey from the bees, inspired by clover, marigold, eucalyptus, thyme, the 100 perfumes of the wind. Bless the beekeeper who chooses for her hives a site near water, violet beds, no you, no echo. Let the light lilt, leak, green or gold, pigment for queens, and joy be inexplicable, but there, in harmony of willow herb and stream, of summer heat and breeze, each bee's body at its brilliant flower, lover-stunned, strumming on fragrance, smitten. For this, let gardens grow where bee lines end, sighing in roses, saffron blooms, buddleia, where bees pray on their knees, sing praise in pear trees, plum trees. Bees are the batteries of orchards, gardens. Guard them. Water. Your last word was water, which I poured in a hospice plastic cup, held to your lips, your small sip, sigh, then in the chair beside you fell asleep. Fell asleep for 3 lost hours, only to waken, thirsty, hear, then see a magpie worn in a bush outside, dawn so soon, and swallow from your still full cup. Water, the times I'd call as a child for a drink till you'd come, sit on the edge of the bed in the dark, holding my hand, just as we held hands now, and you died. A good last word. Nights since I've cried, but gone to my own child's side with a drink, watched her gulp it down, then sleep. Water, what a mother brings through darkness still to her parched daughter. Another elegy I'd like to read is a poem called Liverpool. Liverpool is the university I went to in the UK, a city I love very much. And I don't know if you heard over here of the football disaster, Hillsborough, when 96 soccer fans were squashed to death at a football match. And it took 25 years for the families to have the truth told about what happened that day. And I was in Liverpool the day the cathedral rang its bell 96 times, once a minute, in memory of the young people who had died. So this poem I wrote as Poet Laureate when the official report was published and vindicated all the dead people. Liverpool. The cathedral bell tolled, could never tell, nor the liver birds mute in their stone spell, or the Mersey, those seagulls wailed, cursed overhead, in no language for the slandered dead. Not the raw red throat of the cop keening, or the cop's words censored of meaning. Not the clock, slow hand-clapping the coroner's deadline, or the memo to Thatcher, or the tabloid headline. But fathers told of their daughters. The names of sons on the lips of their mothers were prayers. Lost ones, honored for bitter years by orphan, cousin, wife. Not a matter of football, but of life. Over this great city, light after long dark, and truth, the sweet silver song of a lark. The bee in parts of the world is vanishing. You have heard of colony collapse disorder. This means that one day the beekeeper will go to the hive and the bees have not returned. And in parts of China, farmers are now employing people to pollinate their fruit trees by hand because they're losing their bees. And if they don't pay people to do this, they will have no fruit from their orchards. A horrible reality. So this poem is called The Human Bee. I became a human bee at 12 when they gave me my small wand, my flask of pollen, and I walked with the other bees out to the orchards. I worked first in apples, climbed the ladder into the childless arms of a tree, and busied myself, dipping and tickling, duping and tackling, tracing the petals' guidelines down to the stigma. Human, humming, I knew my lessons by heart. The ovary would become the fruit, the ovule the seed, fertilized by my golden touch, my Midas dust. I moved to lemons, head and shoulders lost in blossom, dawn till dusk, my delicate blessing. All must be docile, kind, unfraught for one fruit, pomegranate, lychee, nectarine, peach, the rhymeless orange. And if an opening bud was out of range, I'd jump from my ladder onto a branch and reach. So that was my working life as a bee, till my eyesight blurred. My hand was a trembling bird in the leaves, the bones of my fingers thinner than wands. And when they retired me, I had my wine from the silent vines, and I'd known love, and I'd saved some money, but I could not fly, and I made no honey. And for my penultimate poem, read a very English one, which I hope you'll get a little of. In the UK, the country is divided up into counties. So we have Yorkshire, Lancashire, Cornwall, Devon. I'm sure many of you have relatives in these places. And the post office in Britain want us to stop using the names of the counties when we write letters, to just put the postcode. And when I heard this, I was consumed with a kind of middle-aged fury. Because I really love, like all poets, I love to name things, even at the thought of using the list form too much. As you might have noticed today, there's a few lists sneaked in there. So this is a sort of love poem to the names of the counties. And also as a child, I think childhood is often a great influence on us as poets. I love to write my name and address in my books. So in my case, it would be Carol Ann Duffy, 21 Poplar Way, Mospit, Staffordshire, England, Great Britain, Europe, the world, the universe. My parents were Catholics, near God. And you really needed the county in there. And one of my favorite short lyric poems is the beautiful Adelstrop by Edward Thomas, in which he sort of comes to a halt before the Great War in the middle of England, and he listens to all the sounds around him on a station platform, and then he names where he is. So my last line here is from Edward Thomas, the counties. But I want to write to an Essex girl, greeting her warmly. But I want to write to a Shropshire lad, brave boy, home from the army. And I want to write to the Lincolnshire poacher to hear of his hair, and to an auntie in Bedfordshire who makes a wooden hill of her stair. But I want to post a rose to a Lancashire lass, red, I'll pick it. And I want to write to a Middlesex mate for tickets for cricket. But I want to write to the Ayrshire cheesemaker and his good cow. And it is my duty to write to the Queen at Berkshire in praise of Slough. Not really. But I want to write to the national poet of Wales at Ceredigion in celebration. And I want to write to the Dorset giant in admiration, and to the Inland Revenue in Yorkshire in desperation. But I want to write to my uncle in Clackmannanshire in his kilt, and to my scrumptious cousin in Somerset with her cidery lilt. But I want to write to two ladies in Denbighshire near Llangollen, and I want to write to a laddie in Lanarkshire, dear Lachlan. But I want to write to the Cheshire cat, returning its smile. But I want to write the names of the counties down for my own child, and may they never be lost to her. All the birds of Oxfordshire, Gloucestershire. Thank you. For my last poem, I'd like to finish with a poem about my mother. I read a poem just before called Water, which was about her. And Kevin, in his introduction, mentioned that I had a war poem in which I run time backwards. That is from the Bees. And there's another poem, a more personal poem, in which I do this. So I think of them both as resurrection poems, really. So in this poem, I imagine that the very first time I ever meet my mother is at the moment of her death, when I was with her. But the poem rewinds time, so we go, as it were, forward in reverse from that moment of death. And I call it Premonitions. We first met when your last breath cooled in my palm like an egg. You dead, and a bird outside sang it was morning. I backed out of the room, feeling the flowers freshen and shine in my arms. The night before, we met again to unsay unbearable farewells, to see our eyes brighten with re-strung tears. Oh, I had my sudden wish, though I barely knew you, to stand at the door of your house, feeling my heartbeat calm as they carried you in, home and healing. Then, slow weeks, removing the wheelchair, the drugs, the oxygen mask and tank, the commode, the appointment cards, until it was summer again, and I saw you open the doors to the grace of your garden. Strange and beautiful to see the flowers close to their own premonitions, the grass sweeten and cool and green, where a bee swooned backwards out of a rose. There you were, a glass of lemony wine in each hand, walking towards me always, your magnolia tree marrying itself to the May air. How you talked, and how I listened, spellbound, humbled, daughterly, to your tall tales, your wise words, the joy of your accent, un-English, dancey, humorous, watching your ash hair flare and redden, the loving litany of who we had been, making me place my hands in your warm hands, younger than mine are now. Then time, only the moon, and the balm of dusk, and you, my mother.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.